Hi guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. Today we're going to talk about all the books that I added to my TBR in the month of November. So yeah, let's just dive right in. So as always, these are books that I added to my Goodreads TBR, not my physical bookshelf, during the month of November, as well as the source or who I heard about the book from. So I ended up adding 8 books to my TBR this month. I read 16, so that's a step in the right direction as far as decreasing the number of books on my TBR. The first book that I added to my TBR is In the Hall with the Knife by Diana Petterfreund. And I heard about this from Rachel Fryman in her October wrap-up video. All of these videos, as always, will be linked in the description box down below. Please go check them out. Give these booktubers some love. And yeah, so this is a Clue retelling, I think. That's how it was described, and I love Clue, so I figured it sounded like something that might be worth checking out. Kind of like a whodunit, murder mystery, closed room sort of thing. That's my perception of it anyway. So that's why I added that one to my TBR. I also added The Yellow House by Sarah M. Broom, and I heard about this from, you guessed it, Ink and Paper blog, and this was in his 5 nonfiction November recommendations. This sounds very intriguing. It is the story of Sarah's mother, who very early on in life was widowed and got remarried. She ends up having 12 kids total, and then her husband dies and she's widowed again, and her house becomes her 13th child, and they're in New Orleans, and it's just kind of the story of the home and what it means to them, but also the family and the family history and their how they view home. And then Sarah and her relationship with her home and with her mother, I believe. It sounds very, very intriguing. And yeah, Russell just made it sound too good to pass up. So that one got added to my TBR. I also added The Lies of Locke, Lamora by Scott Lynch. Okay, this is one that after adding it to my TBR, I've since heard multiple people talk about, and now I super, super want to read it. But the first person that I heard talk about it to the point where I wanted to add it was Teresa at Ivy Muse, and she did a video called Better Versions of Popular Books, which I think is a brilliant video idea, and I loved this video. So it talks about a bunch of really popular books. Think Six of Crows and Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and those types of books. And these are books that she thinks were done better in that regard. And so The Lies of Locke Lamora was on this compared to Six of Crows. And yeah, she said Six of Crows was good and she enjoyed it, but she thought that Lies of Locke Lamora did the story better. And since then, I've seen Murphy at Murphy Napier talk about how it's one of her favorite book series. The series is one of her favorites of all time. And so now I'm super intrigued to check this out. So that definitely went on my TBR, and I am excited about it. I have no idea what it's about other than that. So that's enough for me, though. I also added a book that I ended up also reading in November, and that is called Belonging by Nora Krug. This is, the subtitle is A German Reckons with History and Home, and that's exactly what this is. This is a graphic novel, kind of, but it's tons of illustrations and just pictures of Nora's family and things from her childhood, or not her childhood, but her family history. And it's all about her. She was raised in Germany, and she is German, and it's about how she has learned to come to terms with her German heritage and being proud to be German, even though Germany has a very, we'll say, dicey history. And she really, at a certain point in her life, got to the point where she did a deep dive into her family history and what their involvement was in the war, and asking the really hard questions that nobody wants to ask and a lot of people don't want to know the answers to. And it was so good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It was really, really a great kind of exposition of her family history and what it meant to her as a person and how she has kind of come to grips with things and just learned to embrace her family for who they are. And it was just so good. And it doesn't pussyfoot around anything. It throws everything out there, and whether her family joined the Nazi party and what their relationship was to that, and she had an uncle that died in the war, and is it okay to feel sad that her uncle died and because he was fighting with the Germans? And it was just so good, and I highly, highly encourage you to go pick it up if you haven't heard of it before. Definitely. All right, next on my list, I have Cheshire Crossing by Andy Weir and Sarah Anderson. I heard about this from Allie at Hardback Hoarder. She did a library haul for September and October, and she mentioned a few graphic novels. She mentioned this one, and then she also mentioned The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by Eric Shanauer, which I also picked up and loved. If you haven't seen my November wrap-up yet, this was amazing. Cheshire Crossing, though, it reminds me a little bit of like Every Heart a Doorway, the Shauna McGuire series, which I haven't read, but all of the synopsises, this is kind of sounds similar to it, but it follows Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, Wendy from Peter Pan, and Alice from Alice in Wonderland, and they are sent to this boarding school to kind of deal with their extraordinary experiences, and they kind of band together, and they don't want to sit in school, so instead they start making trouble. And it's a graphic novel. It sounds really interesting. It doesn't have very high reviews, but it just sounded fun. And yeah, so I added that one to my TBR. I also added The Lost Girls of Paris by Pam Jenoff, and I added this one after watching Sarah's Nightstand, one of her Bookless Thursday videos, Thankful for Historical Fiction video. This is about a girl post World War II who is at a train station and finds an abandoned suitcase that has a bunch of photos of different women in it, and she finds out that the women in the photos were part of like a secret agent ring, and so she kind of just goes into a deep dive on their stories. I think that's what it sounded like. It sounded really good. I love historical fiction, so it sounded right up my alley. I also added Homework, a memoir of my Hollywood years by Julie Andrews. She has another last name too now, but I just put Julie Andrews because that's who I know her as. And this is a new memoir that she just came out with. I am obsessed with Julie Andrews movies. I think she's brilliant. The Sound of Music will forever just be this iconic thing in my childhood, and I love, love, love that, as well as Mary Poppins. But between those two, I'm just, yeah. So, love Julie Andrews, and this sounded interesting. She was a guest on Ellen, and it kind of came up in one of my social media feeds, and I didn't know that she had written a new book. I've not read any of her other books either, to be completely honest, but this one sounded interesting because it has to do specifically with her time in Hollywood. So I went ahead and added it as a nonfiction book that I might be interested in reading because, yeah, Julie Andrews. Need I say more? And then the last book that I added is A Boy Called Christmas, which I actually have out from the library now, but it's downstairs, so I'm not going to go get it. This is by Matt Haig, and I heard about this one originally from, what's her name? Desi at Pastel Pages. And she did like a Christmas vlog, like stepping into Christmas and preparing for Christmas. And she mentioned this and just ranted and raved about it. And I believe it's the story of like how Santa became Santa Claus, but it's a middle grade book and it sounds fantastic. I'm actually hopefully going to be buddy reading this one with Krista from Books and Jams during the month of December. Because I have this and then The Girl Who Saved Christmas, which is like the sequel to it maybe. But it's by the same author. I have both of those out from the library to hopefully read this month. So those are all the books that I added to my TBR during the month of November. If you have read any of these, as always, please leave your comments down below. Let me know what you thought about them. If you have a book that you heard about this month that you added to your TBR that you're really excited about, please share that with me as well. Who knows? Maybe I'll check that one out. So other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya!